بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today's lecture, inshallah, will be about reported speech in English language. And as we always start with the objectives of this lecture, the first objective that we are going to deal with, which is effective communication, because it's very important to understand report speech so that it masters, let's say, it help master the reported speech, which allows learners to accurately convey what others have said, enhancing their ability to communicate effectively in various situations such as conversations, interviews, and presentations. The second can be or will be also is indirect speech skills, to learn them in order to understand the reported speech, of course, to help learners transform direct speech, quoted speech of course, into indirect speech, enabling them to report statements, questions, commands, and requests in a grammatically correct and contextually appropriate manner. Also, report speech is crucial for narrating stories, anecdotes, and events, as it enables learners to recount dialogues and conversations in a way that maintains narrative flow and coherence. Learning report speech as well promotes accuracy in reporting information by incorporating appropriate changes in verb tenses, pronouns, time expressions, and reporting verbs based on the context and tense of the original statements. Also, report speech provides insight into social interactions and cultural nuances, as learners grasp how report statements reflect attitudes, emotions, opinions, and intentions of speakers. These are the main objectives that we are going to deal with, inshallah, in our lecture today. Now, the key terms will be used, we call it in Arabic, mustalahat, okay? The first, key term is reported speech itself. This concept which refers to the indirect reporting of what someone else has said. It involves conveying information or statements made by another person using one's own words and reporting structures. Also, direct speech, which refers to the exact words spoken by someone, usually enclosed in quotation that comes between two quotations or quotation marks. For example, we can say quoted, of course, she said, I am going to the store. I am going to the store refers to the speaker, she, which is female, of course. But here, as direct, we have I am going to the store. Also, indirect speech refers to reporting what someone else has said without quoting their exact words. It involves changes in verb tense, pronouns, and time expressions. And this is one of the rules, that when we quote or when we report speech, okay, generally we change the time of the tense, or some expressions also are changed related to the expressions used by the speaker. And of course, as reported, when they are changed when reported. For example, she said that she was going to the store. She said that she was going to the store. Also, here we can say she said she was going to the store. That here is omitted, or optionally used, Reporting verbs. Also here, the verb used to introduce the reported speech. This is the reporting verb. It is common reporting verbs which include, of course, here say, tell, ask, inform, explain, and many other, of course, reporting verbs. Reporting clauses as well. We have clauses. These are clauses that introduce reported speech. They are typically include a reporting verb and the reported statements or question. For example, she said, which is reporting verb, said here, that she was going to the store, reporting statements. Tense changes, as I mentioned earlier, that is, there is a tense change, that the time of the verb is changed sometimes, because we report the direct speech into indirect, so it becomes as in the past, so it's reported. So it refers here, when we talk about tense change, it refers to the changes in verb tenses between direct and indirect speech. For instance, present simple becomes past simple, present continuous becomes past continuous, present perfect becomes past perfect, so on and so forth. Pronoun changes as well. Of course, the I, we pronouns and the related pronouns also changes. They change to refer to the speakers, let's say, okay? So it refers to this key word, let's say, or term refers to changes in pronouns to maintain grammatical correctness in reported speech. For example, I becomes she or he. Depends on the speaker if it's she or he. You becomes they. We also becomes they. So so on and so forth. Time expressions also refers to words or phrases that indicate the time of the reported speech relative to the time of reporting. For example, include today, yesterday, tomorrow, last week, next month. Okay, these also words that they are changed, of course, when we deal with them in the reporting statements. Backshifting refers to the phenomenon where verb forms in report speech shift back, change to an earlier tense in relation to the original direct speech, as I mentioned earlier. For example, she said, I am happy. Direct speech becomes she said that she was happy. Okay, so as of course she was happy reported speech. Indirect questions, of course, here questions as of two forms here, yes or no questions and information questions refers to the questions here that are reported indirectly, often involving changes in word order and verb forms. For example, he asked, where are you going? This is the direct question, where are you going? Becomes he asked where she was going. That is you here becomes she because she asked where she was going. Or, that is the subject is she here. So these are the main terms or the key terms that we are going to use in this lecture. To introduce now or to start our lecture here, as we discussed, report speech, of course, of English grammar here is the time or the aspect that is, or a grammatical aspect that used to tell or to describe, let's say, actions, okay, either in the present or in the past, but again, or even sometimes in the future. And this is just what we need to report, even, that is reported as direct or indirect, okay? So in this session, we will investigate the fascinating world of how we report what others have said in indirect and grammatically accurate ways. Reported speech, also known as indirect speech, is a fundamental aspect of communication that allows us to convey conversation, statements, and questions made by others in our own words. And we discussed parts of the objectives of this lecture, and to understand the concept of report speech, to learn the key changes and transformation required when converting direct speech to indirect speech. Practice, of course, using reporting verbs, tense changes, pronoun changes, and other essential elements of reported speech. Also, to enhance, let's say, your skills in narrating stories, dialogues, and conversations using report speech structures. So these are some of the objectives that we've mentioned, and also we are going to deal with in this lecture. Throughout this lecture, of course, inshallah, we are going to explore various examples and engage in interactive activities and analyze real-world scenarios to deepen our understanding of report speech. And inshallah, at the end of the lecture or session, you will have a solid information about reporting verbs, about report speech, okay, and how others, let's say, have said accurately and fluently express themselves in using report speech. Let's go back now to the main topics of the lecture. المحاور الرئيسية للمحاضرة in Arabic. So we have here the first one, we have introduction to reported speech. Now to begin with here talking about reported speech, we'll start with or by introducing, let's say, the concept of reported speech, also known as indirect. We can say either reported or indirect speech, which involves reporting what someone else has said without quoting their exact words. Explain that reported speech is commonly used in conversations, storytelling, interviews, and written narratives. The key changes, of course, as reported speech from direct to indirect or to reported, we have some key changes that highlight the, and require when converting direct speech, quoted speech, of course, into indirect speech, including tense changes, pronoun changes, and changes in time expressions and adverbs. These are some elements that also are changed in reported speech sentences. Example, direct speech, I love ice cream, for example. She said, she said she loved ice cream. So she said she loved ice cream. I change I into she, okay, as the speaker is she, and love into, tense as to past. Report speech, of course, she said she loved ice cream. Now, reporting verbs also introduce common reporting verbs such as say and. We discussed this earlier, if you remember. Okay, tell, ask, explain, inform, many others. Okay, and for example, we can say he said, I am going to the store. This is direct speech sentence quoted, as you can see. And reported speech, he said that he was going to the store. He said he was going to the store. Other practice activities, we need to, let's say, to tell students, to tell you that activities where you practice converting direct speech into report speech, focusing on the correct changes in verb tenses, pronouns, and reporting structures. Of course, with the examples that you are provided with to change these direct examples or quotations into indirect speech. Topic 2, that tense changes, of course, and which is important in report speech. Here, of course, that is to say, when we talk about tense changes, we change the tense of the sentence, that is the direct sentence, into what? Into past form. So if that sentence is present, we change it into past form. So let me explain more to explore, of course, in detail how verb tenses change when reporting statements, questions, and commands in indirect speech. We can say back shifting as well. It's another process that explains the concept of, let's say, where verb forms in reported speech shift back, changes to an earlier tense, that is to say, in relation to the original direct speech. For example, she said, I am happy. Direct speech, as you know, she said, I am happy. So report speech, we can say she said she was, or that she was happy. A sequence of tenses, of course, to discuss how different tense forms in direct speech, present simple, present continuous, present perfect, correspond to specific tense forms in report speech that they become, as we said earlier, past simple, past continuous, past perfectly, respectively. Example now, they said we have finished the project. We can say this is direct object, we have finished. Reported speech becomes, they said that they had finished the project. They had finished the project. Interactive exercises. Also, we have to conduct exercises where students practice changing various direct speech sentences into reported speech, focusing on tenses or tense changes and back shifting. Topic 3, that is indirect questions and commands. Of course, here is another type of, let's say, reported speech, is that using indirect questions and commands because they have a special case here. Okay, explanation now, and we need to introduce the concept of reporting in direct questions and commands, which involve changes in word order here, of course, since the question has different word order from the sentence or the statement. In this case, we have to change the word order of the question to become as sentence, as reported sentence. So which involve changes in word order, verb forms as well, and reporting structures. Indirect questions, for example, discuss how direct questions are transformed into indirect questions in report speech, often involving changes in word order and the use of reporting clauses. For example, she asked, "Where are you going?" This is a direct question. So we can report it as, she asked where I was going. She asked me, for example, where I was going. If I say method, she asked him where he was going. She asked us where we were going. So it depends on the object coming after, the verb, the reported verb question here that's asked. If it is he, him, or me, or us, etc. Indirect commands explain how commands and requests are reported indirectly using reporting verbs and appropriate structures. And this is here, we use imperative forms as commands, help me, for example, or open the door, etc. So this, when we report these commands or imperative sentences, we have special, let's say, use to change into reporting questions or reporting comments. So, for example, here, please help me with this. Help me with this. This is direct question. That is speech, direct speech or reports. To report it, we can say he asked me to help him, with that. So he asked me to help him with that. So we have changed, asked me, and we have help. The imperative form of this verb becomes infinitive, to help, and of course, me becomes him because he asked me. He is the speaker. Him refers to the speaker. Of course, this becomes that it is one of the elements that must be changed in reported speech. Role play activity is also another, let's say, concept we need to think of as, of course, practice, let's say, of, report speech. We need to engage students in role play scenarios where they practice reporting indirect questions and commands or statements, focusing on accuracy in reporting structures and verb forms. So by incorporating these themes and activities, you can develop a solid understanding of reported speech, master the necessary changes in tense and structure, and effectively report what others have said in various contexts. The summary of this lecture or this session here, the lesson aimed to equip students with the skills to accurately report what others have said using indirect speech, also understand tense changes and backshifting, use appropriate, let's say, reporting verbs and structures, and effectively convey information and dialogues in written and spoken communication. Of course, in this case, we can tell that the lecture, of course, include, as we discussed, introduction to report speech. We discussed the importance of report speech in narration, that's say, in changing or in reporting statements, direct statements or questions or commands to indirect ones, which help us, of course, or practice more and learn more about speaking the language and how to report actions or sentences or statements into reporting statements or reporting structure, that is to say. So also explain the concept of report speech indirect as the act of reporting what someone else has said without quoting their exact words. Also, we discussed the importance of reported speech in effective communication, storytelling, interviews, and narratives, as I mentioned earlier. Tense changes and backshifting that we also discussed. It is one of the most important that when we change on when we report statements, there is a need here to change the tense of the verbs, okay? If it is present, we change it into past. If it is past, we change it into past perfect tense, okay? So all present tenses change to past tense, and all past tense change it to, past perfect tense or past perfect continuous tense. So this is, of course, also highlighted the key changes required when converting direct speech into indirect speech, including tense changes, pronoun changes, and backshifting of verb forms. Also, we discussed this. We mentioned some examples on these changes, or let's say in changing direct speech into indirect speech. We demonstrated also how different tenses in the indirect speech correspond to specific tenses in reported speech. For example, present simple to past simple, and so on. Reporting verbs and structures, as we discussed here, it's important to know the verbs that we use in order to report the statements or commands, or let's say questions, because they are different. In questions we said asked, okay, requires مثلا. In, let's say, command, we can say either ask or tell, okay, but when in statements we use said or say. So, and of course, in addition to others, reporting verbs used to express or to convey, that is the direct speech into indirect speech. Introduce common reporting verbs such as say, tell, ask, explain, and their usage in introducing report speech. Also, we discussed reporting clauses and structures used to introduce reported statements, questions, and commands. Indirect questions and commands, of course, also already explored the transformation of direct questions into indirect questions, involving changes in word order, verb forms, and reporting clauses. Also, we have covered the reporting of commands and requests in indirect speech using appropriate reporting verbs and structures. Number 5, that we discussed activities for practice. Also, we've had, let's say, some activities that we practice through explaining these with examples. Okay, we provided various activities for students to practice reported speech, including direct to indirect conversion, worksheets, role play dialogues, backshifting exercises, narrative writing tasks, and interactive quizzes. Encouraged peer interviews and storytelling games to reinforce understanding and application of reported speech structure. That's all for the reported speech as this session, okay? And inshallah, we'll have more practice, more examples to discuss in the coming sessions and the coming lectures. Thank you for today. Have a nice time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.